All right, time to go teach. Hello and welcome to this next episode of Tutors, where we are continuing our journey through the cell, and we are looking at cellular respiration, the first part of it, with a little bit of a general overview as well to cellular respiration. Targets of the day. First target is to describe the purpose of cellular respiration. Why in the world do cells actually undergo this process that we call cellular respiration? Next, target is to identify the stages of cellular respiration. It doesn't have one stage. It depends on if we're talking about aerobic or anaerobic cellular respiration, on how many stages it has, but we're going to go through all of them through the next series of videos. And lastly, to describe the process of glycolysis, which is the first stage of cellular respiration. And that is where we're going to start today. So, first, the purpose of cellular respiration. What's it all about? It is to generate ATP. That is adenosine triphosphate, the energy transport molecule of the cell. Without ATP, the cell will not have the energy to do basically anything. It is the molecule that the cell will use to do the typical characteristics of life, whether that is maintaining homeostasis or responding to stimuli, or it could be something as simple as the cell reproducing. And the location where cellular respiration takes place depends on what stage you're looking at if the organism happens to be a eukaryotic cell. If it's a prokaryotic cell, then clearly it would just be in the cytoplasm. But in a eukaryotic cell, the stage of cellular respiration could either be occurring in the cytoplasm or it could be occurring in the mitochondrion. The reactants, remember this from the chemical equation, which is glucose plus 6O2 yields our product, which is carbon dioxide and water. That's the overall chemical equation for aerobic cellular respiration, which is what we are going to be looking at. The steps. Well, first off, we start with glycolysis. That is the first stage of cellular respiration. The next stage, the Krebs cycle, also called the tricarboxylic acid cycle or the citric acid cycle, takes place only in the presence of oxygen. Same with the electron transport chain. That also only takes place in the presence of oxygen. If, on the other hand, oxygen isn't present, then we go through this stage called fermentation. But for today, what we're going to look at is glycolysis. Here's how it works. First off, glycolysis, we start off with glucose. Now, glucose is a 6-carbon molecule, and that's why right here we are just looking at 6 carbons all in a row. We're just going to follow these carbons as they undergo this process of glycolysis. We're not going to look at the overall molecular structure. That's more detailed than I want to go into in this lesson. So to start off with, the glucose is actually going to get phosphorylated. And how it's going to get phosphorylated is through the donation of a phosphate group from ATP. To actually have cellular respiration take place is going to take energy of ATP to start it. Without using a little bit of ATP, we actually can't go through the process of glycolysis. Our first thing that we're going to do, even though the main thing we want to build is ATP, we are going to have to break some ATP down to provide the energy required for the rest of the process. Now that we have phosphorylated our glucose on both ends, we are going to take this molecule, and through a few different reactions and the use of enzymes, this molecule is going to get broken down into 2 3-carbon molecules. Our 6-carbon molecule has now been split into 2 3-carbon molecules, each containing a phosphate group. This molecule can then end up getting phosphorylated, and using enzymes will also help generate another molecule called NADH. It will donate a hydrogen to an NAD+, and that's how we're going to end up making NADH. And NADH is going to be a very important molecule later on when we go through the other stages of cellular respiration. So you should pay attention to that one. It's really important. And at this stage, we have made 2 NADHs, and through that process of forming the NADH, we also ended up phosphorylating that 3-carbon molecule. So now we have 2 3-carbon molecules that are phosphorylated on both ends. And because of that phosphorylation, now these 3-carbon molecules can donate those phosphates to ADPs, and we generate ATP. And even though it cost us 2 ATP to start this process, we've in the end generated 4 ATP molecules for our 1 molecule of glucose. We've also generated 2 NADHs, and we've also built a molecule called pyruvate. That's what our final 3-carbon molecule is called. It is pyruvic acid or pyruvate, and that will be really important to start the next stage of aerobic cellular respiration. The pyruvate is going to lead us into what's called the link reaction, which will then go to the Krebs cycle. That's glycolysis. It is universal in all organisms. Every single organism on this planet performs glycolysis. And it's really important because it works in the presence or in the absence of oxygen. It doesn't matter if oxygen is present or not. It always works. And glucose, that is our starting material. That 6-carbon sugar, C6H12O6, is so important to all of life because all of life is able to perform this process. It does occur in the cytoplasm. Again, that means it doesn't matter if it's a prokaryote or a eukaryote. They can perform glycolysis. The inputs would be glucose, our 2 ATP, and our NAD+. But our outputs, it's really important, we generate 2 pyruvate, 4 ATP, and 2 NADHs. We used up 2 ATP, but we made a profit of 2 ATP. In summary, cellular respiration, it has multiple steps, depending on if it happens to be aerobic or anaerobic cellular respiration. But either way, it's going to start with glycolysis. And that process of glycolysis, it produces those 2 profit ATP, which is so crucial to the purpose of what cellular respiration is all about. And it also produces NADH, 2 of those per glucose. They are going to be used again in those later stages. Those other stages, the Krebs cycle and the electron transport chain, they rely on the presence of oxygen. If oxygen is not present, then the cell will have to undergo anaerobic cellular respiration, which would be the stage called fermentation. And we will cover those in the next few videos. Until next time, be awesome, stay awesome.